Not the way I'd normally do it. Oops. Hair right. Why have I not got, Hannah, why have I not got people to sort me out? Really, I should have people. Hello, I'm Mike Buchanan, leader of the political party Justice for Men and Boys and the Women Who Love Them. I'm also the conference director and pleased to say it's going unbelievably well. Well, maybe that's not the right word, but it's going very, very well. I'm joined as co-host today by Terry White, somebody I greatly admire. Been doing some great work in recent times, and also works alongside other good people at Gender Parity UK. Our first interviewee today is the wonderful Natty Raymond. She is nothing short of a heroine to me after the incident in Cambridge, which you just saw. She's always a little bit embarrassed when I say things like that, which is rather quite quite touching. But I just so full of admiration of what she did that day. It was already going to be a great PR day, what with the riots outside and everything else. But she absolutely made it to my mind, the best day in the 8.5 years of J4MB's existence. So I take my hats off to you, Natty. Natty, I wonder if you could just say a few words about what brings you here, your interest in men's issues and feminism and so on.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. Thank you for your compliments. I don't know how to take them. Sorry. I'm glad you enjoyed that day. It was one we'll never forget. So what brings me here today is I'm here to do this Q&A and chat with you guys. But what brought me to the men's movement in general, I did media, cultural studies and journalism at uni. And so I was indoctrinated very strongly into progressive and intersectionality and feminism. And so I remember thinking at the time, this is a load of B.O. bollocks. Can I swear? I did genuinely just thought this doesn't make sense to me. And then over time, I started to look into, alternative politics and things. And I was just thought that that society was kind of mad for embracing patriarchy theory and specifically. And then when I looked into it a bit further, I realized that men were being shafted quite significantly. And I was just left quite angry that me as a woman, if I want to take personal responsibility, I should be taking responsibility and be held accountable for my actions. And I was existing in a society that kind of prevented me from doing that or made it difficult to. Whereas men, well, that's kind of their default position. If things go wrong for them or they make a wrong decision in their life, that's it. They've got to live with the consequences. And I found that conflict quite difficult to deal with, to be honest. So that was what brought me into the movement. I looked around for people who were interested in this, and the MRA seemed to be the ones who got the accountability of women right for me. I don't necessarily agree with everything that everyone else says all the time, but that is the core principle that I think everyone pretty much rallies around.
Terry, would you like to ask the first question?
Yeah, this was from Steve Moxon. You say you're very pessimistic regarding the law, mentioning that they're trying to make misogyny unlawful. But the Law Commission has now dropped the idea of making even sex a hate crime domain in favour of an incitement to hatred law regarding sex, and that's not just women. Don't you think the government will fall foul of this so that crowd-funded legal challenges are the way forward? So I believe the question is, now that they've made the incited to hatred law relate to both sexes, do you expect the government will screw it up and fall foul of it, and that legal challenges will be necessary and are the way to go?
Is Steve saying that, are you implying, Steve, that basically men can use this to their advantage?
Yes, I believe that's the point.
Sorry, you're being too intellectual for me, mate.
He's just said yes in the chat room.
Yeah, okay. I can see. Yeah, yeah. I think I've discussed this before. I think, especially with some other policies that have been passed, like coercive control in relation to domestic violence. You remember that case that was promoted on TV quite a lot not that long ago with that young lass that got arrested for and convicted for coercive control. Then there was Caroline Flack, which was quite an interesting one because it was infuriating that everyone gave her sympathy, but at the same time, the CPS were really trying to prosecute her, which was a good thing, right?
Yes.
So I think that, yes, we could probably see some gains and also the normies on the ground. I believe when I just talk to normal people who are not necessarily specially interested in any particular type of politics at all, they do want to see gender parity, you know, a gender neutral application of the law. So I think I agree with you, Steve. I think when I was saying before about MRAs not doing very well with changing the law, I just mean that, for example, the Istanbul Convention, which Terry has written about, which we'll probably talk about later, but that is all about women and girls. But there's other things in it that's problematic too, right? But I just mean that removing that, I don't think we're going to achieve, at least not now.
I should.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Natty. Go on if you wanted to.
No, I think you can interrupt now. Sorry.
Okay. I should have said in my brief introduction that something else I deeply admire you for, and Elizabeth Hobson, and Belinda, is for speaking at Speaker's Corner. I've been there, must be hundreds of times now, and I always do campaigning there, handing out leaflets and all that kind of stuff. But I've never actually stood on one of those little stepladder things and actually, you know, orated and engaged with the crowd. And the reason for that is that it would just take one 300-pound blue-haired land whale to say something to me, and I'd lose it. I would absolutely lose it, and it would probably be live on YouTube or something. So I'm full of admiration for people like you and Rod Lonsdale and a few others. I mean, you know, you just stepped up on that platform and talked for an hour. I mean, I was just dumbstruck with that. And of course, being a woman, you had 10 times the crowd of the male MRAs. It was a fascinating thing. Anyway, we come to another Steve Moxon question. No, in fact, sorry. Let me just.
Yeah, there is another Steve.
There is another. Yes, I'll alternate because when Steve Moxon asks great questions, it's just that we need a translation into plain English so that the.
I think I had another thought, another point. Just before you move to another question, I think what I was saying in that interview with you was that if MRAs think they haven't achieved anything because we haven't removed the gender parts in Istanbul Convention and other parts of our UK law, or whatever, I was trying to the goal personally. I know that for others it might be, and I know that this does present an opportunity to challenge the government. But I think that the challenging of the government will be mainly about gaining positive PR than actually changing the law, as much as we should try and do that. I don't know.
Okay, no, thanks, Natty.
Yeah, I see your point. Yes.
Yeah.
I'd just like to make. I mean, I don't. This is something that the three of us were chatting about just before we went live, and I've been thinking the next in-person. Sorry, this is a bit of a tangent, but the next in-person ICMI that I'm going to be hosting is going to be in 2024, and I'm inclined to have it in either Eastern Europe, but I've been thinking of going, you know, even a bit further east, and maybe to Israel or even Turkey. And one of the things that inclines me to having it in Turkey is that we could then call it the Istanbul Convention. I laughed my ass off when I thought of that, to be honest with you. So it may well be the Istanbul Convention, mainly because that's funny to MRAs. Okay, we come to Sean G. You talked a bit about some YouTube creators who post man-friendly content from the US. What is it about their content which is most effective, do you think? And what could they do better?
I think you're referring to, he's probably referring to Kevin Samuels, maybe? Is that what I was talking
I'm not sure, Natty. I'm not sure.
I think
he's asking who you're talking. Who are you talking about?
Okay. I think I might have said that in general, but I then mentioned Mr. Kevin Samuels at some point, I think. Yeah, right, good.
Yes,
okay.
sorry, Natty. Sean G says yes, Kevin Samuels.
Yeah, I can see he's... Yeah, good. So Kevin Samuels, I think, has been very effective right now. He's having a bit of a moment, as I mentioned. He's managed to survive YouTube, and he's been gaining followers and gone viral and stuff.
Is this I'm sorry to interrupt, Natty. Is this the black guy?
Yeah.
Ah, yes. Okay, I know.
So he's the guy who was an image coach, and
right.
And he was an image coach for men. And then he used to do a lot of videos about perfume and image, right? And then I sort of followed this from the beginning, because I've listened to this guy called Obsidian Ali, who used to write for AVFM before, and I think he's been on Honey Badger before and stuff. And I followed him for years, and he's spoken about Kevin Samuels quite a lot. So I think what happened is they became friends. And then he sort of got encouraged to start talking to women and do like a calling show concept. Now, it's a lot of it's done for entertainment value, and I'm sure you find it very entertaining having women call in, and then he sort of just basically tells them, stop being entitled. And that's pretty much what he does most of the time. But he has lots of moments of just genuine connections with people, and I think people appreciate that. So I think he gets the balance right. Okay, he's probably not everyone's cup of tea, because he's very pro-marriage, right? Even though he is very much aware of all the legal I think he's someone that is informed, and he's not. I think in the past, you probably had people who are more traditionally conservative in some ways, or socially conservative, right? And they haven't always been aware of everything that's going on, legally speaking. And so they've waded in and spoken about MGTOWs or something. Whereas I think Kevin Samuels is basically, he's at the point where he's aware of all of it. And so he's come right round again and rounded his whole argument off. But what's really important, the reason I mentioned him, is because he says, I am a men's advocate, and I advocate for men. And even though this call-in show at the moment is targeted at women, it's because men have told me I need to speak to women. And I don't have women coming on here disrespecting men. As soon as a woman goes on the show and starts talking badly about men, he chastises them and then embarrasses them. And he's very, very firmly about men. And I know that him and Obsidian, they all talk about creating a men's channel or a men's media company, and it's all very... Argument has been that everything has been aimed at women, through the channel of women, like marketing and TV shows and all that. It's all aimed at women. And there are financial reasons for that, because women tend to control the spending in the household and stuff. But so there is a logical component of it, but then there's also the gynocentric angle too, which I just mentioned him because I think he's the perfect example of what I was talking about, of the evolution of how things have got to now. We have got people now who've been following everything MRAs and other dissidents have been doing, and they've arrived at the point now where they're really, really well informed. And that he got his information from people like Mike and everyone else involved in the MRM. So the original question I've forgotten now, because I've gone on a little...
we might come. We'll come back to that, Natty. But I
think you answered the question really well, actually.
Yeah.
But I did want to pull you up.
Can I? I'm sorry, Terry. Sorry.
Yep.
I just wanted to add something here, just very quickly. Natty, that is just fabulous news. I mean, I've been saying for quite some years now, that what's going to turbocharge the men's movement is an entrepreneur or entrepreneurs setting up media channels and monetizing this. Because
he's very clear that he wants to monetize it.
Yeah, so. Because you know, and I hope someone becomes a gazillionaire on the back of men's, you know, out of media channels. I think there'll be huge demand for it. And I think it's only, the mainstream media is not going to do this until it has competition from a channel like that. So that's wonderful news. Sorry, Terry, please go on.
Real quick one. You said that there was, and it was just an off-the-cuff comment in there, but you said that there were disadvantages in marriage, and I just wanted to point out that there are no disadvantages in marriage. There's disadvantages in divorce, and I think it's a bit of a shame that we've associated the two
I
the way we have.
Agree with you, Terry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I just wanted to highlight it.
Yeah. You're right.
Terry, do you want to answer the next question?
Okay, re the end of civilization, exclamation mark. Don't you foresee societal shocks destroying identity politics and its feminist core, with widely forecast impending economic and social collapse, which may produce a nightmare of feuding warlords and even civil war? Not only will former hegemonic ideology be irrelevant, but it will be discredited as the elite are blamed for allowing, if not causing, the disaster.
And I might just add that it will not surprise you, Natty, to know that was a question from Steve Moxon. Sure.
Thank you, Steve, for being the intellectual that you are. Yeah, I touched on this in the interview with you, Mike. So I've already sort of spoken about this when I have my little rants on Facebook or whatever. Really, one day I should try and write an essay, but I'm not an intellectual. I'm just a big mouth, so that's not going to happen. But like, this is already happening. What you're talking about, where the progressive and intersectional takeover of society is just there to destabilize things, to usher in the real utopia that they're trying to create, and that is to eradicate sexual dimorphism, biological sex as much as possible. And I think that in a way, because men are kind of more useful because they're the workers and all that, and if they don't want women having babies because they really want to get rid of like reproduction, and I know that sounds like a ridiculous sci-fi film, but that is where we're headed. It's all going to be kind of, in a way, this is why I was saying before about the fact that the TERFs are right in the sense that they're aiming the trans stuff at men, saying men become women, everything will be much better for you. Look, all this lovely female-friendly legislation. Look, society's gynocentric, we love you. Become a woman and things will be easier for you. Oh, but you've still got to fight wars and you've still got to go to work and you've still got to do this. So it's like, and then women will just sort of not exist somewhere over here. I don't know. And because have you noticed that you've got, you know, a man who tries to become a woman, he sort of gains or is trying to gain the gynocentric privileges. But a woman that tries to become a man, she's losing them, sort of. But then people still know she's a woman because they look at her and think, like Elliot Page, for example, bless. I have nothing but like, I don't want to humiliate that woman because like, I just cry. I want to cry when I look at a picture of what she was and what she is now. She's like a 12-year-old boy. It's really sad, right? And she's probably going to kill herself at some point. And I'm not even joking about that. Anyway, so I'm just saying you can see what's going on here. So I'll bring it back to the question. We have what I have observed, young men being sort of interested in everything that's going on, and they find something called neo-reactionary thought, or NRX, for those of you that know what I'm talking about. And then you've got the guy who's sort of been promoting this called Curtis Yarvin, or his name used to be, I've forgotten now, but it'll come back, Curtis Yarvin, and he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson recently on Tucker Carlson's talk show, which means he's, you know, presenting himself to the world a bit more. He's not just this kind of niche blog poster and internet, you know, reactionary essay writer. But the reason I bring this up is because they are promoting the new model that's being emerging now, where everything is run through technology, and there'll be like an AI system controlling all of our systems, our financial systems and everything. He's sort of saying, this is okay, this is a good thing. And if you follow my philosophy and the cathedral analysis, and you apply this and take this seriously, then we can get rid of those pesky feminists and the intersectional progressive types, because they're horrible and everyone hates them and they're trying to destroy men and women, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff is quite correct in, you know, he's accurate in his analysis. But then he's sort of saying, you know, right, but now we're going to have a kind of feudalistic system run through AI, and women are going to be put back in their place, the ones that still exist, because, you know, everyone else is going to be trans. So they're sort of being, we're sort of being offered a solution, right, to the problems now. And there are people that are pretending to be kind of dissident, you know, grassroots. I'm a intellectual type, and I just don't buy it personally. I have a bit of a thing against NRX, so you can hate me, I don't care, right? But I'm just saying that is already happening. The people that are like the thinkers, the ones who like to spend time reading all this new intellectual thought and that, we're already being presented a new paradigm, and I can see it emerging, and I can see people like Kevin Samuels and all the fact that women are calling into his show and publicly being embarrassed by saying, I don't buy into feminism anymore, what do I do, right? So we're already there. The shift is already happening. It's just a question of what is really going to happen. It's like what they'd like to happen, we can see, right? They're telling us all the time what they'd like to happen, but what's really going to happen? And that's why in the interview with Mike, when I was having my little whatever off the cuff comments, I was just saying that maybe we'll probably end up with something like The Handmaid's Tale, right? And I know that feminists love that book, but really that book is quite paradoxical in many ways. And by the way, in the book, men are still the worker bees, and working class still get nothing.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
My view, for what it's worth, is that societies can be in decline for a long time before they completely eradicate the, for want of a better word, the goodwill, or rather the assets that they've accumulated during their growth. But what will kill it is actually an external force coming in, a competition, and they'll be outcompeted in the end. So I don't necessarily see a internal revolution occurring. I see an external outcompeting, and rather it would just be taken over by someone else, essentially. But certainly, I don't think anyone should be looking forward to decline of our society in any way. I have watched on the sidelines as societies have disintegrated, and there is nothing good for anyone to come out of it.
But I think you're right, Ty. I think it's got a long way to go. Whenever I hear MRAs say the tide's about to turn, the dam's about to burst, no, it's not. Not without us doing something proactive. Because it's like, you know, people will I often find people who don't know much about this stuff to talk about a pendulum. The pendulum will swing. On the contrary, the pendulum has swung in the direction it has, and every time it moves in that direction, the feminists put a nail in the wall to make sure it doesn't go back. It's not men are gonna, you know, I can hardly imagine how much suffering men have to go through before they will rise as a class. I suspect there is no point at which men as a class will rise up.
It's a classic.
How else do we do it?
It's a classic stoicism, isn't it? That male trait makes them particularly susceptible.
Yeah.
Right. Do we have more questions on the Q&A?
I can see. Sorry, go on.
No, go on, Natty.
I think Moxon responded. He said that's certainly a possibility the Chinese or Muslims or both. Then he says Warren Farrell. I don't understand that bit there.
Recon with the reckon within the decade that there will be a cataclysm, basically.
Yeah, he's quite optimistic.
He's
quite optimistic about this. I'm deeply pessimistic.
Optimistic about what specifically, though?
There'll be that feminism is heading towards a crash.
Sorry, you froze it, Mike.
Within the coming decade.
Oh, I agree with Steve. I believe I've just made my whole spiel just now was that feminism is going through a crash, but not in the way that you want, because it's going through a crash because we're being pushed towards being androgynous, not because men are suddenly going to be recognized as human.
I think yes, that's a very interesting point. I mean, for me, feminism is as an ideology has rapidly become a train crash. Absolutely become a train crash.
Yeah.
But the influence of feminists in in every bloody sphere that you like, I cannot think of a sphere where they are not in there like a huge cancer. And they still have the power directly. We had three, I don't know if you know, Natty, but we had 3 Conservative MPs lined up for this conference. All 3 of them bailed without reason. They wouldn't give any reason, but clearly I presume they have ministerial ambitions, and the only MPs who can speak up are those with no ministerial ambitions, such as Philip Davis.
Yeah, that's right. Philip Davis is a bit of a maverick anomaly, really. Personally, I don't have any faith in talking to any politicians apart from someone like him, who probably won't last very long anyway. I mean, he's got his wife, Esther.
Esther McVey, yeah, former cabinet minister.
No, he's a bit longer than him because she's a woman. But
I was just going to say, he'll be in Parliament as long as he likes. He's a very popular constituency MP. And when Sophie Donuts Walker stood against him, I think it was in the 2017 election. This was the leader of the Women's Equality Party. She lost her deposit. I mean, that was one of the happiest days of my life. It was probably my favourite individual result of that day.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably will stay until he, say, retires, for example. Yeah. But let's be real, he, as much as he's done a lot and everything, I love Philip Davis, but he's just one man, and basically what's going on is this massive revolution of trying to change the way that we govern. Okay, I think this is a good moment to bring this up. You guys are aware of Claire Fox, who's a Lord now, right? And when she became a Lord, she started doing all these videos on Facebook to show what she's been up to and her thoughts about it. And what I've seen from her is that she recognises that basically, especially with COVID lockdowns, the parliamentary process has been undermined and is becoming more and more irrelevant by the month, by the year. And I personally think that's on purpose. Because if we're going to have a system that's sort of controlled by AI, and that sounds ridiculous, but we don't need MPs anymore. They're just going to be people that are MPs, but they're not really going to have any influence anymore. And as you notice, they do consultations and votes, and we don't get our say anymore at all. Not really. There are some things we get small wins on still, but they're going to be less and less, personally, I think. So, up until, say, 2030, which is where the year where they kind of want to wrap things up and have everything move on to this new system, however it forms out. It might fail. I'm hoping it does, right? But, I'm just saying that as much as I agree with you, Mike, I think that you do need to think about where things are headed. And, that stuff is becoming less and less important.
My take on it, and it was actually prompted by these 3 MPs bailing on us. Philip Davis, as we all know, in 2005, in his maiden speech in the House of Commons, said he had no ministerial ambition. And that's the only reason that he can do what he can. And I think these 3 MPs were told quietly, if ever you want to be in contention for a ministerial role, they are also backbenchers. If you want to be in contention for a ministerial role, you will not speak at this conference. You will not attack feminism or feminists. But I just want to say that that helped us develop our strategy for the relaunch of the party in February, March, I have come to the conclusion after 8.5 years of running J4MB that the political classes will not, they cannot be influenced. Sorry, how to put this? I mean, just have a look at Natty at the International Men's Day debate. What, eight or nine MPs? One of the male MPs talked for 12 minutes.
They aren't by us plebs, Mike.
But
Right,
but so the point is, you know, I had to think, you know, if I'm going to carry on leading this political party, what strategy is there that recognizes the impossibility of impacting on politicians? And that was Nigel Farage. Farage's strategy worked beautifully. You know, he was elected an MEP, as you know, but not an MP. But I mean, the man is one of two political giants in my lifetime. The other one being Margaret Thatcher, which is going to upset a couple of people here. But anyway, so sorry, Natty, I've spoken too much. I've spoken too much. Go on.
I recognise what was positive about Thatcher, but unfortunately, I think she really opened the floodgates to a lot of what we've got going on now. But, you know.
Okay, Terry, I think we have a couple more questions.
We do. There's a question from Carl Palmer to you, Mike. I think that might be better handled in a different.
Oh yes, sorry. Yes,
I'm going to skip to Sean G's one, if you don't mind.
Yes, go on.
I asked Anne Widdecombe about the instance of office. A quote from Hamlet. The phrase has stuck in my mind all week. It seems so widely applicable in every part of the functioning of the feminist grievance industry. Fewer than half the people who can vote do, but there's no quorum. Isn't feminism visibly rotting our UK democracy too? I don't quite understand the argument.
I'm lost. Sorry. Can we do
I
that?
wonder if Sean, can we perhaps ask you to reword and resubmit that? So I'll answer another question here. Mike, Carl Palmer says, Mike, I see you don't like no fault marriage. No, I put something in the chat room which is a bit tongue in cheek. He said I don't believe in no fault divorce, and I replied I don't believe in no fault marriage. But he asks, have you considered producing your book, The Marriage Delusion, The Fraud of the Rings, in Kindle format? There's a reason that I'm not going to do that, Carl. But if you email me privately later, I'll explain that to you. It's not something I'd like to say publicly.
I'm just reading Sean G's question again. I think he says, isn't feminism visibly rotting our UK democracy too? Because most people don't vote, and so yes, I would say that feminism is rotting our democracy too. I think democracy is being attacked in numerous ways, not just by feminism, but feminism is an umbrella ideology over pretty much, you know, lots of things, right? That's how it's designed. So yes, just because you know, when you just say women need this, and then most people say, yeah, they probably do, so why can I argue against that? And that's kind of how they win, isn't it? So
yeah, Sean G has clarified here. He said, because all parties are equally pro-feminist, there's no alternative. So only one side of the most important divide is represented. So presumably he's saying that with his former question on quorum, that because people are demotivated to go and vote, we're not getting we're not actually getting a majority view in politics. And I think that that's a fair comment. I think that it's not just the feminist line. I think that there's a lot of domains where, I mean, you only have to see Keir Starmer's appalling performance in not objecting to the recent COVID mandates, or not even putting up an argument against them, when clearly there are tremendously good arguments to have. And yeah, I think that there is a genuine risk, and I think although it is not necessarily feminist, I think that the feminism movement is part of this coagulation, this political coagulation that's frustrating democracy, the proper exercise of democracy.
I'd just like to bring up here Richard Lucas, the leader of the Scottish Family Party. Very interesting guy, very interesting party. They've been around for 4 years, and we're actually sort of finding them quite inspiring. But he pointed out in his conference speech, which is part of his speech in this one, that if you vote, if a Scottish voter votes for anyone but the Scottish Family Party, they are basically voting for abortion, because every other Scottish party, certainly the majors, are all pro-death, as I call it, rather than pro-choice. And I find that quite fascinating, that I never looked at it through that lens. So if you say to voters, really, I mean, go with what your gut tells you, go with what your moral leanings tell you, and how can that lead you to an abortion-friendly party? 73 million unborn children killed last year, according to the World Health Organization. That is going. I believe that is going to become the flagship issue for the men's rights movement. Some more questions. Oh, sorry, Terry. Shall I ask the next question?
If you wish. But I actually had some prepped questions if we're running short.
Yeah, go.
Yes. Okay, Terry. No, but please ask one or two of yours.
Okay, Natty, I was struck by your comment about social androgenization. I think you referred to it as the eradication of dimorphism. And I sent you an article that Gender Parity wrote for Lotus Issues, which we can't share. But it's not theory, is it? It's written into the black and white typeset of treaties like the Istanbul Convention that are supposed to protect women. When and how will women in our society realize they've been duped into signing themselves into non-existence?
When and how?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I mentioned earlier that the TERFs already are, grabbing hold of this, even though they were part of the problem in the first place, as we know. When and how? I think so.
Well, I'll rephrase it slightly, because we say at the TERFs, when we were talking prior to this, I mentioned that I wrote into one of these TERF groups saying, look, who were saying that they support the ratification of the Istanbul Treaty, and yet that is exactly the treaty that eradicates, that insists that gender is departed from sex, and therefore we need to identify, the only way of identifying gender is through stereotypes, and then goes on to say we must eradicate stereotypes. So in the black and white of the Istanbul Convention is the requirement to eliminate gender, to eliminate men and women. And I just feel that these TERFs have just been completely duped into signing on to these programs that are against their interests. And when and how can we get them to realize
that? Well, I think some of them have realized that, like Posey Parker has realized that, because Posey Parker now rejects the term being a feminist. I suppose she still has some of the same views that are influenced by feminism, but she recognizes that she can't continue to be a radical feminist and fight against this. I think that unfortunately, our popular culture in general is promoting this androgynous, gender fluid life, because there's trans and then there's gender fluid, right? And they don't quite seem to understand that they're against each other.
Yeah.
They should be enemies, but they're not at the moment. But they have their own little anyway. And as everything in our culture is promoting, in the mainstream culture, is promoting being androgynous, right? And that's pretty much where it goes down to. It's not so much when you're trans. I personally think the agenda of the trans thing is not to make, because you physically can't turn a man into a woman. I'm hate crime, whatever. You can't do that. You can't turn a woman into a man, especially, right? Even more so. And so therefore you're just creating these weird androgynous beings that are not really human anymore. That everything is going towards that in many different ways. Not feminism is that umbrella thing that brought it in, over many different, because feminist theory can be applied to everything. But, you know, it's very, very strong in the environmentalist movement.
Is that so?
Well, yeah, because they are be child free because we need to save the environment.
Yes.
The
Yes, good point.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they're also promoting the kind of the having society controlled by technology, and then if you basically live online, you can be whoever you want to be. It's all
Yes.
going the same direction. And so for me, when you said that, how are women going? When and how are women going to realize this? For me, when they have children, as that's when you realize that having a baby for me is the hero's journey for a woman. Okay.
Yes.
Labor is the hero's journey for a woman. It's not the same as men. It's a very womanly thing to do.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And some of the things that the feminists have got right, I personally think, in the past is advocating for natural home birth, that sort of thing. Because when a woman is in hospital, she's going to have many things, probably going to have the NHS violate her in some kind of way. And I use that word purposely, right? Yeah. And that makes me sound a bit feministy, like doctors are raping us. But actually, when you really look at it, birth is a natural process. It's not a medical process. And we've been propagandized into saying we have to go to hospital for it, when hospital should be the last resort. Anyway, so when a woman gives birth, she realizes she's really going, you know, really realizing the fact that she's a woman, she's giving birth. And after birth, I think a lot of women go through this process where they realize that they need help from a man and others around them. And they cannot exist as this individual androgynous being. It's just not possible. Right? And so, you know, for me, one of the only things that's going to help change things is to promote people forming families, which is, I think, why Mike is going in the right direction by saying, let's
focus on the family.
Focus on the family, right?
Yes.
Because men in the family, they have their purpose. And women in the family have their purpose, and everyone has a purpose, and everyone is working together for one unit. We had it right in the past, and why did we depart from that? Well, we all know why, but it's really sad that people keep embracing all of this stuff being thrown at them, telling them to be androgynous units of consumption and workhouses. I think, I think that is when women will realise, and unfortunately, there are a lot of women that are delaying that process. And I'm not saying that those who never have kids won't ever realise, but maybe observing someone else's experience will help them. Yeah, that's my answer.
Posey Parker, of course, I think speaks quite often at Speaker's Corner. And we have some comments from Rod, who is an absolute hero of mine. The amount of work he does down there. He says, I've met and spoken to Posey Parker on a few occasions. She's a misandrist and gynocentric. Her victim female narrative is her real message. Her think of the children slogan is nothing more. Don't trust her. And Rod has always also told me on a number of occasions that that she's absolutely firm in the belief that women are badly treated in the family courts. I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you?
Well, the problem is with family court is that no one wins. Everyone is a loser in the family court. So it's quite easy to get a distorted view on both sides.
I've had this argument with women that who have been promoting parental alienation as a made-up thing by men's rights activists and blah, blah, blah. And we all know the data says completely the opposite.
Yes.
However, there does seem to be a small percentage of women that when they are victims of parental alienation, they seem to get, and unfortunately this is going to sound like a weird argument, but it's what the data seems to tell us, is that when a man does it against a woman, he's particularly good at it. He's better. So women in general seem to be good at parental alienation because they use manipulative tactics that normalize the society in a gynocentric way, right?
And of course they have the children at the time. He
has to be sociopathic, right? He has to be like in the top 10% of a man that can probably manipulate and control everyone, right?
Yes.
So therefore he's particularly effective, and she feels particularly victimized because most people can't see it because he's very, very effective. And so there is a very small percentage of abused women who are like screaming about this, but really their experience is not the norm. The norm is like large numbers of men being denied access because their ex is like bitter because he left her. And I know women, people that work, who advocate for men in family court, and they make the argument that, and Philip Davies took this on, that parental alienation is most often an extension of domestic violence, coercive control against men, because most of the time it happens when there's a correlation when the man leaves the woman because the woman did something in the relationship or whatever, and he leaves the woman, she's punishing him for leaving her. And that's generally when parental alienation happens. You guys all know that. But I'm just saying that when you talk to a female victim and she gets attracted to the feminist making this argument, she basically just needs a therapist to sit down with her and say, look, your experience is real. You are dealing with a sociopath narcissist. They exist. It's just that when they're men, they seem to be very, very ruthless and effective. And it's really hard for other people to see that's what they're like. And it's easy for people to see the women that are manipulative, which is a bit weird, even though they have more power in society. But,
I mean,
but
Mike and I
given
both
that they tend to have custody of the children in more than 90% of cases, they have the time and the opportunity to alienate. That's the difference, I think.
Mike and I both have commercial experience of negotiation and etc. I think we can both say with fair confidence that when a man is truly sociopathic, they are completely ruthless and capable of tremendous harm and evil. But that's the same for women as well. But
population, very small, statistically irrelevant in really.
But they also happen to be. Well, I don't know, but I've certainly seen them tend to be quite successful commercially, perhaps because of that. And so they also have a tremendous amount of resource coming with them as well. So deeply terrifying, I imagine, for a woman to be facing that.
Steve Moxon writes, that's insightful of Nat and reflects the divide re partner violence. It's a minority of men who are psychopathological, whereas it's a female norm.
Yeah, I laugh, but it's not funny. Yeah.
Tony, do you want to ask another of your questions?
This is a strange one. Okay, so the nature versus nurture question actually derives from medieval inheritance law, where a child would have a guardian for nature, who was originally the feudal lord and then later the father, and this was all about inheritance of the assets and welfare, and a guardian for nurture, where being both parents equally and about the care of the child, but that was really the mother's domain. So woven into the fabric of the nature versus nurture question is that nature trends masculine and nurture trends feminine. And so sex being natural in a cultural context trends masculine, and gender being social trends feminine. And is the social deletion of sex in favor of gender the ultimate feminist rejection of the patriarchy?
I think yes, probably. That's my first thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. That's a quick answer to a long question.
Yeah. No, you've done a nice. I like what you did there. Because men had to go out in nature, they have to exist and they have to tame nature, and women get the fruits of the labour of the men. And then they're nurturing young men or young boys and children to then go out into nature. And really, it should be thought of as reciprocal, like this, like a cycle together. But we do them as separate.
Yes.
Stop doing that. They're intertwined together.
We only have 2 or 3 minutes left. An interesting question from Sean, and I'm not quite clear what I don't know what's prompted it. Sean asks. I can certainly answer this if you don't want to, Natty. He asks, is Wikipedia untrustworthy?
Do you want to answer it? Can we
Yeah.
put it together?
It won't take me long, but my own Wikipedia page was constructed by a woman called The Vintage Feminist. I'm actually quite pleased with the page. I mean, although it's constructed by a feminist, there's plenty of stuff on there. There's some errors, but in general, anything to do with men's issues is appallingly corrupted. I mean, people who tell me that they've tried to post, for example, on male circumcision, links and so on. They take a screenshot of it and it's there. 5 seconds later, they refresh it and it's gone. It is the amount of censoring on Wikipedia in relation to anything to do with gender politics and the issues to the side of me. It is just is utterly scandalous. But we know that they have sort of feminist, feminist camps, just going through everything and corrupting everything.
Natalie. She thought I was going to ask another question.
No, has Steve Moxon put another one in?
Oh, good.
No, I was just about to say, Natty. I don't know.
Sorry,
if you saw... No, I was just going to say, perhaps you saw a Steve Moxon question and ran off crying. I'm not sure.
No, I love Steve Moxon's questions. Me and Steve need to have a chat. Actually,
I love them as well. I just don't understand most of them.
No, I do, but I need like, he's just too fast for me. I thought I was sharp. I'm not an intellectual, but I'm sharp. I know that I'm sharp, but I'm not an intellectual, right? Yeah. But I need like a minute and I'm like, okay, I've got it. But if I was in like a debate with him, I would just be like, you're all too much, go away.
You probably didn't
That's a
spot
good
it.
hold, you're right.
You probably didn't spot it, but in the chat stream, he reacted to my proposal to run an Istanbul convention in a way that's only a Yorkshireman could. And he said, "Oh, good, that won't be expensive."
Steve, I need to talk to you because I haven't spoken to you. Anyway, I'll send him a perfect message. I am actually near Yorkshire. Anyway, the reason I ran off is because my mother-in-law's phone is not on silent. So I just need to move. I'm going to move it outside the door because I don't.
No, Natty, it's okay. No, I have to wrap up now.
Oh, if you want to do one more question, I can hear it while I do that, and I'll do 1 second.
Yeah, Terry, another question?
Yeah, sure. Many of the metrics that feminist activists use to measure equality are focused on issues that the psychometric science tells us are habitually male. For instance, earnings, corporate board membership, wealth, and assets, rather than people-oriented, such as time spent with infant children or life satisfaction, which psychometric testing shows that women are actually more interested in. At its fundamental core ideology, is feminine itself truly misogynistic?
And Natty, you have 30 seconds, max.
Yes, I think I've said this before, probably in the past, that I think feminist ideology is misogynistic because, as we've discussed already, the Trojan horse is to eradicate sex and to make us androgynous, right? That's pretty much the end plan, and I just, it's really sad that women can't get the cognitive dissonance in their head to connect enough at some point where they say, well, actually, wait a minute, I can't go into my work and demand that HR give me more time off for childcare and do a job at the same time.
I'm sorry, Natty, but we have to wrap it up. Natty, we have to wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Natty, thank you for being what you always are, an absolutely brilliant commentator and funny, and so many great qualities wrapped up in one person. It's unbelievable. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much, Terry, for joining me. And just got a few seconds. Our next session, the next video is somebody who another hero of mine, Will Noland, the father of 6 children, who was fired by Eton College for refusing to take down his video about patriarchy theory. So that's going to be good. So Terry and I will be hosting his Q&A in an hour's time. I hope to see you all there. Bye for now.
Okay, thanks. Cheers, guys.